Well, it appears that U.S. President Trump is no longer ruling out allowing Ukraine to acquire American-made Tomahawk missiles. The long-range weapons have been a mainstay of U.S. defenses for decades, with ranges of up to more than 1,500 miles. Kyiv believes the missiles could be a game-changer, as they would give it the ability to inflict huge damage on Russia. The Kremlin has warned Tomahawks would destroy relations with Washington.
Ukraine has been stepping up attacks inside Russia, especially on the country's energy infrastructure. Here, they hit a power plant in the western Russian city of Belgorod. They've also been deploying waves of drones, sometimes hundreds at a time, to strike oil facilities, some reaching the outskirts of Moscow. Ukraine has long wanted more missiles capable of striking deep inside Russia, in the hope this will bring Moscow to the negotiating table. But Kyiv has received increasingly powerful missiles only in stages, as Washington feared an escalation of the conflict. First, it was HIMARS multiple rocket launchers, then longer-range ATACMS missiles. Trump has infamously gone back and forth, seemingly frustrated by the ongoing war. He briefly suspended weapons deliveries to Ukraine earlier this year. But since his summit in August in Alaska with Russian President Vladimir Putin produced no results, there has been talk of agreeing to a Ukrainian request for what something could be a game-changer: U.S.-made Tomahawk missiles.
Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, or sell them to NATO and let them sell them to Ukraine.
Yeah, I've sort of made a decision, pretty much, if you consider. Yeah, I think I want to find out what they're doing with them.
Yes.
You know, where are they sending them, I guess? I'd have to ask that question.
Tomahawk cruise missiles were first introduced into service in the 1980s. They can carry a 500-kilogram payload and are usually fired from ships. They can fly at low altitudes to avoid missile defenses, can be reprogrammed in flight, and can even loiter over their targets before striking. Tomahawks could make a difference for Ukraine. Tactical missiles like British Storm Shadows, German Taurus, and US-made ATACMS have ranges of a few hundred kilometers. Tomahawks can reach targets up to 2,500 kilometers away, putting Moscow easily in reach, as well as the Olyenya Air Base, one of the main launch sites for Russian missile attacks against Ukraine. European NATO member countries would have to buy the Tomahawks from the US and transfer them to Ukraine. That's raised fears that Europe could be dragged further into the conflict. Russia's President Putin has been clear about what he thinks the consequences of such a move would be for ties with Trump.
There were issues raised, such as discussions about supply of new weapon systems to Ukraine, including long-range and high-precision systems like Tomahawks. I've already said that this will lead to the destruction of our relations, or at least the positive trends that have emerged in these relations.
But for now, it is another case of wait and see if Trump pushes ahead or backs off and changes his mind, as he has done in the past.
And joining me here at the big table now is Ivanna Klympush-Tsintsadze. She's a member of the Ukrainian parliament for the opposition, and she is chair of Ukraine's Parliamentary Committee on Integration into the European Union. And today she's here in Berlin with us. Ivanna, it's good to see you. Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Tomahawks for Ukraine from the U.S. via Europe. Are you holding your breath for this one?
I think everybody was really surprised to hear this, announcement, if it's announcement by President Trump, but I don't think we are there yet. I think we should be very realistic, focus on more realistic things at this particular point, which are very much needed for the front line. And I am sure that at some point, if Russia doesn't change its behavior, Tomahawks and Tauruses will come.
From Germany, maybe.
Maybe.
Is Ukraine prepared to take on the political risk, though, if you were to get the Tomahawks? You know, you've had Vladimir Putin say that he would consider that to be an attack by NATO. He would view Western European countries as targets then. Are you willing to take on that political risk?
Putin understands the only language of strength, of unity, of pressure, and that is when he backs up and so backs down. I think that it's really important to change Russia's behavior is to actually hit where it will be painful for Russian Federation, for Russian state, and would change the behavior. And I don't think that that would be seen as a attack from the NATO country. I think it's part of the bluff.
Yeah, exactly. You have urged Europe to plan as if the U.S. may not be a reliable partner in the future. Do you trust Europe to pick up the slack if there is an American absence?
You know, trust is a scarce commodity, and it comes based on actions. And I think we've seen how Europe has been maturing to this task and how it has been taking more and more responsibility and clearly recognizing that it is not exclusively about Russia-Ukraine relations, that Ukraine is standing in the way of autocracies attacking the way of life that is, that has been taken for granted around Europe. So I think there is more understanding that it's about common European security, and I hope that there will be more and more clarity and readiness to take more responsibility by Europe.
But it has to keep you up at night, though, doesn't it? I mean, Europe replacing...
Russian rockets are keeping us up at night, and unfortunately they are doing this with a huge escalation without any provocation. So...
But Europe replacing the U.S. if need be, that's not possible in the near term.
Well, at this point, unfortunately, Europe doesn't have enough production capacity and ability in military industry. And that's why I think at least this minimum that we got between Europe, agreement between Europe and the United States that through European money, with European money, equipment, military equipment that is not there could be bought from the United States. But I also hope that we will move forward with this frozen assets issue of Russian Federation. And I think that there is a great possibility right now, which is supported by Ursula von der Leyen, which is supported by Friedrich Merz.
Do you understand why it hasn't happened already?
Oh, definitely. We've seen this caution, this fear, this...
escalation management, that's what you've said, right?
Yes, escalation management that has been over all this 3.5 years. Russia doesn't care about escalation management. It escalates not only right now exclusively on the territory of Ukraine, but also on the territory of the European capitals. And I think, again, it's important to push back. And that is done through pressure, through strength, and through force.
How would you explain to, let's say, a European audience or even Germans? You know, the majority of Germans are not in favor of sending more weapons to Ukraine. That's what the polls show us. How would you explain to them that there are certain red lines that need to be crossed with weapons?
Well, the latest I saw, actually there were more than 55% of Germans who were supportive of more assistance to Ukraine. Maybe we were watching...
Well, it could be money. I'm talking about weapons. Yeah.
Okay, about weapons. Yeah. If we do not stop this monster and this basically cancer on our territory, and then this cancer will come into your societies on your ground. And it's much, much cheaper to pay right now to help Ukraine, to stop the monster, to defeat Russian Federation for the sake of everything that you've been enjoying across Europe, to continue enjoying it, as opposed to having the necessity to send your own
troops,
people to protect your own countries. If we fail, it's going to be not Ukrainian failure. It's going to be our common failure. But then you have to be prepared that you have to die for your countries. I don't think that anybody wants that, and we don't want that.
Right. I want to talk about the situation inside Ukraine. You have been quoted as saying the alliance and the European Union currently trust Ukrainian society. Unfortunately, they have stopped trusting the Ukrainian government. That's quite an indictment of your own government.
Well, I think that there was a very serious hiccup, mistake, diplomatically speaking, on behalf of the Ukrainian authorities with attack on the anti-corruption agencies. We've tried to warn that this is unacceptable. Well, we're not listened to, and I'm very grateful that Ukrainian society, even in the times of war, even with all the restrictions of the martial law, have gone out to say, no, this is not something that we will give up on, because it is about democracy, because it is about accountability, because it is about our European path.
Who do you blame then for that mishap? President Zelensky?
Well, I think it was brewed, unfortunately, somewhere in his office, and the revelation of that was that he actually signed that the very same day, very quickly. But thank God he understood also very quickly, due to the societal response and due to the response of our partners, that this is an acceptable way.
I know that you have said that you would like to see elections, but in the middle of a war, that's not feasible. I'm just wondering, at what point does President Zelensky go from being a wartime president to a worn-out president?
Well, it's not only not feasible during the wartime, it's not possible. It's legally not possible, security-wise not possible, and it's not possible if we want to have really free and fair elections and not have something that is called elections in Russian Federation, but just reappointment of the same leader. That's not what Ukrainian people like, and that's we are known for our desire to have an impact on who is guiding the nation. So therefore, we unfortunately during the wartime we cannot have the elections, and we are taking this very seriously and very responsibly. Well, for the President Zelensky, I think he still has a chance to re-engage all the society through, suggesting the government of national unity, and that I think would also reinvigorate the parliamentary discussion and bring on board everybody who is pro-reform and pro-democratic European free and sovereign Ukraine. And that, I think, is something that is still very much needed.
And he has to do that. And at the same time, you're hoping that he can lead a country that is going to win a war.
Well, that's exactly why we need that, because that exactly the unity of the Ukrainian people, and irrespectively of the political forces, has helped us at the very beginning to be efficient and to be resilient to that Russian initial push with the full-scale invasion.
Ivanna, good talking with you. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you for taking the time to come in and talk with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Brent.
All right, take care. Well, for more, I'm joined now by Frank Ledwidge. He's a senior lecturer in strategic studies at Portsmouth University, and he's a former UK military intelligence officer. Frank, it's good to see you again. Ukraine says that Tomahawks could finally push Russia to the negotiating table. From your perspective, could deeper strikes really shift the balance on the battlefield?
No, is the answer, Brent, and good evening. We've heard this word game changer a number of times before. In the last three, let's say, were F-16s, ATACMS, HIMARS, and there are probably a dozen others. There's no such thing as game changers in modern war, and this isn't going to be one of them. This is essentially a half-a-ton bomb, or actually not even that, on the end of a rocket, much like the Storm Shadow. It's a considerably longer range, but that's what it is. Just to put this into context, I was involved in 2 wars on the ground, involved with exactly this kind of work of targeting. And on Kosovo or on Serbia, we used thousands of similar bombs, including many hundreds of Tomahawk missiles. Same in Iraq and in other theaters. It takes that level of strike density to make a difference. And Ukraine isn't going to get that kind of numbers. At the very best, it'll get a few dozen. It'll be able to deploy them in a few months at the soonest. So no, this is no more a game changer than F-16s. It does add another arrow, as it were, to the quiver, but that's pretty much it. However, the significance lies in more than its tactical advantage. It lies, as we've already heard, really in the rhetorical significance of this totemic missile, if you like.
Well, Moscow is warning that supplying Tomahawks would destroy relations with Washington. Some of the Kremlin even hint that they could carry nuclear warheads. How serious is the risk of escalation if any of these missiles are delivered? Or is this, as you just said, is this a lot of political and military blustering?
More of the latter, I think, than anything extremely significant. Tomahawks can carry nuclear weapons, and the Russians could use that as an excuse to use this term again and again, escalate. I think it's more likely that we will see lateral escalation with weapons that have already been used, such as the Oreshnik, which we last saw used. It's a very significant, extremely formidable missile. We last saw it used about a year ago on Dnipro, following, in fact, the deployment of another US game changer, supposedly weapon system, the ATACMS. And we may see that kind of response, which is significant from Russia. Now, I can't predict what the Russians are doing, and neither can anyone else. But I would suspect that's the nature of the response we will see, if not necessarily the scale. Let's see what the Russians have in mind if indeed this happens, if indeed these weapons are deployed.
What do you make of the Russians claiming that their air defenses can handle Tomahawks? They say that they know them from Syria. I mean, is there credibility there?
Limited, I think. The Syrian attack resulted in claims by the Russians they shot down or Russian-designed systems, which they still have, and in fact more advanced systems now, shot down about half of these missiles. Western sources say they didn't shoot down any, but the Russians will be familiar with them. Let's not forget that the Ukrainians regularly shoot down similar weapon systems, the Kalibra particularly, which is very similar actually to Tomahawk, slightly less capable, very similar in nature, and they shoot them down by the dozens. So I've no doubt that the Russians, who have systems designed precisely to address this kind of, or prosecute this kind of target, which is to say the Tomahawk, will be able to address or to prosecute these targets, namely the Tomahawks, quite effectively, or at least some of them. But I don't think that's a significant point, whether they can or they can't. The Ukrainians, in any event, won't be able to deploy enough of them to be operationally significant, I would suggest.
And Tomahawks are designed to be launched from ships or aircraft. Ukraine has neither, correct?
Yes, that is correct. However, they can adapt, and I suspect, given Ukrainian ingenuity, they will find ways to adapt the ground-based system in due course, and I think that's what they have in mind eventually. But look, this is months down the line. There's another aspect to this, and I think this is what the thing that the Russians are really concerned about, is that these missiles require US assistance in targeting at the very least. That is to say, intelligence and information to be given to the guidance systems. Yeah, the Ukrainians will be able to use them eventually. It'll take a while if they're not training them on already, of course. It will take a while, but the Ukrainians will be able to do it. But like I say, not any kind of numbers are going to be required to be militarily significant, let alone strategically significant, in bringing the Russians to the table, as you asked earlier.
Frank Ledwidge, as always, Frank, we appreciate your time and your valuable insights. Thank you.
Thanks, Brent.
And for more now, we are joined by Mykola Bielieskov, who is a research fellow at Ukraine's National Institute for Strategic Studies. How likely do you think it is that the Trump administration will indeed send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine?
It's good that we start talking about Tomahawk cruise missile and the capability it would bring. So we need to make a case for this political decision, and it's good that we started the dialogue. But if we recall, everything started from just talking about specific capability. It happened with Jamal Arasam, it happened with ATACMS and Storm Shadow. So that's good that we started this dialogue and we have this ongoing dialogue.
When we look, though, at the actual practicalities of the Tomahawks, we know that most Tomahawks are launched from sea-based platforms. Ukraine likely couldn't fire these weapons even if it wanted to use them, as it has no proper navy. Is this more about sending a political message?
In Trump minds, probably you are right, that Trump administration thinking that just talking about Tomahawk might bring some additional pressure. Otherwise, you're right that we would have some challenges of adjusting this sea-launched cruise missiles to land domain. But you now have this picture. It is launching of Tomahawks from Ticonderoga type cruisers, and the number of these cruisers were recently retired. And it doesn't require a lot of effort to take MK-41 universal launching platform from these retired cruisers to check them and to adjust them to land domains. So if there is a political decision, principal one, then we can follow on with adjustment and turn sea launchers into land launchers.
Okay, we have heard strong reaction from Moscow on this subject. What were your thoughts when you heard what Putin had to say?
If we would listen to Putin, then Ukraine would fail. There is military logic you can't deny. And the logic is very straightforward. Right now, Russia has a sanctuary. We are not able to deliver a mass of strikes against European part of Russia, where majority of economic capability, military-industrial complex is concentrated. So Russia is enjoying sanctuary. Yes, we are developing our own indigenous capability, but it's still not enough. So if we allow political considerations, and especially Russian threats, to prevail over sound military logic, then you program Ukraine to fail. Do you want Ukraine to fail?
Can you tell us a little bit more about the efforts on the Ukrainian side? We know that Ukraine already has its own cruise missile, the FP5 Flamingo, which has around a similar range of around 2,500 kilometers. Why do they need the Tomahawks as well?
We're just developing this capability. You are right that we managed from scratch to build a number of capabilities, different cruise missiles, different UAVs. But Tomahawk, it's a tested capability. It's 35 years plus of experience, and it's a very mighty platform. And you can see an example of Iskander-K cruise missiles launch very stealthily from the ground platforms, and they do a lot of damage. So there is a number of inherent advantages in this kind of system, and we'd like to have this system in our arsenal, very tested, very powerful, with credible track record. So enough is never enough, and the best strikes are combined strikes when we have different means of attack that exploit its advantages against the Russian system of defense. So it would be a useful addition to Ukrainian arsenal if this decision is made.
Mykola Bielieskov, Research Fellow at Ukraine's National Institute for Strategic Studies. Thank you.